So, what elements make up the urban fabric? The answer depends on your concepts. You can think in terms of layers, you can think in terms of networks, you can think about different materialities. The usual answer is about the physical form and components of the city, the tangible objects like buildings and blocks, which you can see and you can touch. But even the physical dimension of the urban fabric is tricky because we walk through voids between walls. We walk between tangible objects and surfaces that define urban blocks, for instance, and buildings. So space is also the voids, is also continuous, and we navigate through it. And it is structured as a system with the streets we walk in, the corridors and rooms where we live. The urban fabric contains other elements which are created by our minds and our actions, like meanings and activities and social contexts that we perform in space. Something we can call semantic information, which we enact in buildings and places. The idea of information as part of the urban fabric therefore opens up possibilities. We can use this information in our lives and actions. This information cuts across different materialities of space. So the built environment contains information, and different built environments contain different amounts of information. One way of understanding this is through a measure of entropy. Entropy is essentially a property of how unpredictable a system is, and this has to do with disorder. Disordered structures are highly unpredictable, so you can understand information in space by looking into how much order and predictability you can find in the built environment around you. We developed a measure to assess order in the built environment by counting the frequency of different combinations of cells of built form. High frequencies of particular combinations increase order. So we are likely to find higher amounts of order in cities and spatial cultures with strong top-down systemic planning. That is, planning which takes ensembles of buildings into account. We also managed to find a relation between information, entropy, and segregation in cities. If you understand social segregation as a form of restricting interactions, we can imagine that urban structures can have a role in social segregation. So differences of entropy between urban areas may create the conditions for the clustering of different social groups. So that means that the information about where you are likely to live and who you are likely to see on the streets may be encoded in the various spaces around you. So the urban form might encode social distancing in its very structure. So how can we transition to an urban experience without segregation? That's a key question for the future of our cities, of course, especially because we can see that segregation is such a pervasive feature of our cities and societies. In fact, humans are very good at creating differences between ourselves and creating spaces that reproduce those differences. So this requires us to think about how our cities work to both separate people and put them together. And we need some steps to do that. The first step is to understand that segregation has many dimensions. One of them is very well known, the segregation of places for different people, like the poor live over here, the rich live over there. But one of those dimensions is not so well known. And it's a very dynamic dimension. It's about how socially different people move through space, where they go, how their networks of movement may overlap or not in urban space. So if we look into those networks, we can better understand how we can overcome segregation and understand how urban space may foster encounters between socially different people. I think here of the location of major public services and how they are connected with transport systems, how these systems can be articulated in order to increase accessibility and stimulate people's mobilities. so that the networks of movement of different people can actually converge in the same spaces. And socially different people may experience each other in those spaces. So we need to think of segregation in a dynamic way.